Hello and welcome to Your Coaching Journey, a podcast for doctors about coaching. Whether you're a coaching doctor, a doctor who is learning to coach, or a doctor who'd like to build coaching into your professional life, then this is the podcast for you.
Hello, I'm Helen Leathers, and with me today is my co-host and business partner, Tom Dillon. Good morning, Tom. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Helen. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Yeah. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Excellent. What are we talking about today?
Today we are talking about when it's time to say goodbye.
Oh, is there something you want to tell me?
No. I'm talking about when it's time to say goodbye in the coaching room, when the coaching's come to a close and we're ending the relationship.
Phew. Okay, that's good. You had me worried there a bit. So yes, coaching endings. It's an inevitable part of that coaching journey. But one thing that I think many coaches feel uncertain about, how they're going to handle. So how do they know when it's time? How should I handle it ethically and practically? In fact, I had a conversation with someone on a workshop this week of what happens if something's not clicking, you don't feel comfortable with that, what the coachee for some reason. How do I cope with saying goodbye myself? Well, we do, as much as we want to be distance, we do like our coachees, don't we? And we get on with them. So
we want to be distanced. Say more about that, Helen.
Well, not distanced. We'd want to be
detached.
As much
aloof.
No.
Standoffish.
Stop it.
No, all right, okay. I understand what you mean. We need a certain amount of professional detachment.
Professionalism, that's exactly what we need. Exactly what we're missing. But yes, so how do we cope? Because I like my coaches. I like their journey. I like seeing how far they've come. So yeah, how do we cope ourselves when we leave that relationship? So there's some questions that coaches might be asking themselves.
And I do think it needs some careful attention for the coachee, for their benefit and also for our own benefit. But it is a natural stage of coaching, and it's not always easy to see things clearly as the coach. You know, we'll discuss the reasons why we might not find it easy, but I don't think it's always easy to know that the end is coming and just for it to run its course. So I think it does need some attention.
Okay, so let's start with the practical side of things then. How do we know when the coaching relationship is ready to come to an end? Well,
I think the first thing is if we've contracted for 6 sessions and we're in the 6th session, we pretty much know it's coming to an end, don't we? I mean, not inevitably, but there's a good chance that if they're paid for 6 sessions or someone else has paid for 6 sessions, that's kind of it. So there is that natural end, and practically and psychologically, everyone knows it's going to end. So I think easy in that sense of if we have a program of sessions, it's done. So that's all easy. And another way that it might come to an end is if the desired outcome that the coachee had at the beginning has been achieved.
Yes.
So whether that's completion of a project, them gaining some clarity on a situation, gaining a sense of confidence, losing weight, whatever it is that they came to coaching for, if they've managed to achieve that, then again, I think practically and psychologically, we're all going to say, oh yeah, well done.
Yeah.
Off you go.
That's the end. And I think it's important to acknowledge that some desired outcomes may evolve or shift throughout that coaching process. So as new thinking has been generated, as the situation's changed.
I think that's a good point. So the end of the coaching isn't always about reaching the end result that was thought of at the start. Sometimes it's about the coach's readiness to face new challenges independently. So and they might not have reached their desired outcome, but actually feel they can do the rest of it on their own. So there's that both sides to that.
That gaining of autonomy.
Yeah. And confidence in themselves that they can do it without the coach.
Self-efficacy, self-confidence, self-belief, that's where all that comes in, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the coachee, we want them to feel empowered and capable of moving forward on their own.
And really, that's what coaching is all about, isn't it? It's equipping them to feel that they're able to do it on their own. We don't want to be walking alongside them forever. I think a good coach is going to sense when a coachee's reached that place of independence, where they no longer require regular sessions to move forward. But it isn't always clear cut. I think that's the point we're trying to make.
That's true. And there may be times when the coachee might feel like they're sorted, but as a coach, you might feel like they haven't quite got to grips with their situation. And how do we deal with that?
Yeah, so I had a lady that it was after lockdown, so everything was going back to normal. And she'd been very much put upon by her company. A lot of it was her own doing. She'd taken on lots of responsibility for their COVID response, the business's COVID response, and just took it all on herself and was just trying to cope with it all. And was struggling, on the verge of burnout. So came to coaching and really cried through the first session. Like for an hour, she just basically had a bit of a breakdown in the coaching session. So kind of reassured her that coaching was going to help. And she went away and she came back to the next session. She said, oh yeah, everything's sorted. I've had a couple of conversations with different people and everything's fine. Now, I knew that from the way she was in the first session, that everything wasn't fine and she was sort of papering over the cracks. So I gently suggested that it would be good to carry on talking to actually make sure that plans were in place and that she wasn't going to revert to the behaviours that had got her to the place of being on the verge of burnout. So that was only one session in. But that I didn't feel like the relationship had come to an end.
No, and there's something about the relief of actually saying things out loud and getting them out of your system and that cathartic nature of telling your story that can make you feel better, but the situation has not been addressed. Yeah.
So I think if we're in that place of we've made some progress, but we're not sure whether we're at that end point or not, just being curious, asking questions like, how do you feel about the progress you've made? So some exploration of where the coachee is can clarify whether we're really at an end or not. But as we said, the coachee may feel they're able to achieve their desired outcomes, move on that extra bit further on their own. So we have to respect that.
I love that approach. And it brings us to the next important practical aspect, which is closing the relationship when we know it's time to say goodbye. And this isn't just saying, okay, we're done now. It's about having an intentional, reflective closing process. So probably important to ask ourselves, what does that look like in practice?
Yeah, and I think for me, quite often it is having the end in mind during that final session. So when you come to that final session, maybe a bit of a summary of the journey that they've come on throughout the coaching program. So summarising their progress or getting them to summarise their progress, reflecting on that journey and discussing how they'll continue their development after the coaching whilst they're on their own. We might also go back to the desired outcomes that they set at the beginning, see how far they've come, just as a bit of a reminder that they have made progress. So the coaching wheel is a great tool to assess it. If any listeners are wondering what on earth the coaching wheel is, we did discuss it in one of our very early episodes, probably, I don't know, one of the first 10 episodes we did. So
I would have saw like episode 4.
Something like that, wasn't it? It's a very early episode.
Yeah.
So yeah, we might have referred to it as the Wheel of Life, but we can use it as a coaching wheel. So if they had areas that they were looking at improving on in that first session for the coaching relationship, and scored themselves on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is rubbish, 10 is brilliant, they would have given themselves a score and given themselves a score of where they wanted to be as well. So it might have been that they wanted to be a 10 in certain areas. Well, we can dip back in at the end and say, okay, looking at the progress, where do you think you are now? And it might be they go, well, actually on that bit, I'm only a 7. So it might be they kind of recognize, okay, I'm not actually where I wanted to be. Haven't quite made the progress that I thought. Maybe I need to carry on with the coaching for a bit longer. Or they might say, actually, I think I'm where I thought I wanted to be, and I thought that was a 10, but now it's shifted and I want to be further on. So I always think of that when I first was learning to tango and I'd watch someone on the dance floor. I'd say, well, if I could do what they can do, I'd be happy. And then when I could do what they could do, I wanted to do something else. So I wanted to move on even further. So it's that natural progression and wanting to constantly improve, continuous improvement.
Yeah. And I think just to add to that, when we've spoken about positive psychology before, and there's some nice measurement scales and tools for assessing satisfaction with life and that kind of thing. So if people are using that kind of tool at the beginning, if they're interested in using a positive psychology approach integrated into their coaching, to revisit one of those and again, judge that.
Yeah.
For the coachee to judge their progress and see how far they've come.
Yeah, and hopefully, if once we've reviewed all that and they're happy with everything the way it is, hopefully that will, in a very Gestalt way, bring the coaching relationship to some sort of closure. So,
Hopefully.
Yeah.
So, how do you feel about asking the coachee for feedback on the coaching process? What worked well? What could have been better? That kind of thing.
I think it's really tricky. So I think in some ways coaches quite often fish for compliments. They want to be told they've done a good job. They want that affirmation that they're a good coach. But when it comes to getting developmental feedback from our coachees, it's unlikely that they're going to have a good idea of what good looks like in the coaching room.
Yeah.
They'll have an idea of how they experienced it, but that's very subjective. So they might tell us that, well, you went a bit quick during that stage. And we might take that as feedback, think, I need to slow down. And then we might coach someone else and ask feedback. They were, it was all a bit slow and drawn out. So I think, that it could be useful over time to keep gathering that feedback. But I think you could tie yourself in knots just responding to the feedback that people give you, that coaches give you. So I would never dissuade someone from asking for feedback. But feedback from real coachees is tricky. So I think getting feedback from peers and doing some co-coaching and continuing in that practice is a good way to and challenge yourself. And then you have the opportunity to record yourself and watch yourself back and see what you're doing. And we encourage our trainees on our courses to watch themselves and see those little mannerisms they didn't know they had. Can be really helpful. But I think getting peer feedback is much more useful than feedback from clients. If we're thinking about our own development as a coach.
Yeah, I agree. I think feedback about our coaching skills, I don't think we can ask coachees about that. We can ask them about their experience and have a testimonial reference kind of thing for future marketing, perhaps.
Yeah. And it's an interesting one, because I know in the world of motivational interviewing, they're quite hot on that, on gathering the feedback, getting the data, which I guess is great from a research perspective. But I listened to someone doing a demo of motivational interviewing, and it was very much the guy said, I think you went a bit too quick for me at times. The questioning was a bit quick. And listening to it, it didn't seem, motivational interviewing is much quicker as a practice than we would do it. We would take far more time over it. But he didn't seem to be going at a pace that the coachee couldn't cope with. So again, that's very subjective feedback, isn't it? And the coach was saying, I'll take that on board and, I'll try to adjust that for next time. Well, would you really?
Yeah.
I don't.
And you could always ask questions like, on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is not at all and 10 is absolutely I did. How heard were you? Or how heard did you feel? Practical questions like, was confidentiality assured? How did you feel about the contracting? To try to make sure that your coaching process is in place. But I think the mechanics of the actual coaching within the conversation is very hard to get feedback on. And I kind of push back against the suggestion that we should be asking for that from our coaches.
I think we're out of sync with other people there.
We definitely are, but I will argue that point. I will. One thing we've not talked much about are ethical considerations when we end the coaching relationship. And this is something that often gets overlooked, but it's vital to ensure that everything that we do at the end is handled with care, integrity. Well, all the way through, it's handled with care, integrity, and respect for our coaches.
Yeah, no, I think the ethical side of things is important. We have a responsibility to our coachee. And that does that does extend to the ending phase as well. So we do have to give some thought to that. So we have to make sure that the coach isn't left feeling abandoned, and obviously that unsupported in some way. And that could happen if we decide, for ethical reasons, we're not the right person to be looking after them. So if we stray into a territory that we think is therapy. They need specialist support from a therapist. We've got to be careful about how we end that relationship at that point, because they might feel, oh, well, you've just abandoned me. I've got all these problems. You told me all this was. You can't help me. And now I'm stuck. I don't have anyone to talk to. So I think that's important to think about that and how you're going to maybe offer some support beyond the ending. So just maybe offer them the chance to check back in with you to make sure they've got the help that they need.
Yeah.
Make sure they're doing okay. It doesn't have to be another coaching session, but it could be a conversation, couldn't it? Just to say, how are you doing?
Yeah. And we've both asked people to affirm to us in the past, on the odd occasion, that that's happened, that they've got the support they need.
Yeah.
So one ethical consideration is ensuring that the termination process is clear and mutually agreed upon. And I think another key ethical consideration is making sure the coach isn't ending the relationship for convenience, or because perhaps it's uncomfortable to continue. It's our responsibility to ensure that the timing is right, I think, for the coachee, even if that means maybe continuing with the coaching for a little bit longer.
Yeah, and I know it's just how you are as a coach, and it's an interesting one, isn't it? Obviously, if you suddenly get busy, it might be your convenience that you end a coaching relationship. Yes. So you could suddenly end up getting paid work that is being paid far more than the rate that you're charging your coachee at. So you might go, well, actually, that's not really paying me enough now to warrant doing the work. So you could decide to bow out of it at that stage. But that's that is an ethical dilemma, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I think that's most people would see out their contracted hours, their contracted sessions. They wouldn't end, if they'd agreed to have 6 sessions with someone, they wouldn't after 3 sessions say, oh, well, you're not paying me enough, I've got other work now. You'd see it out, wouldn't you? But you might choose not to carry on beyond that point.
Yeah. Most coaches are not lovely people.
They are, yeah, but also business people. So
yes.
there is always going to be that. There might be times as a coach where it's for your convenience that you don't carry on coaching. I actually had a really good example of that. Someone who came to one of my coaching supervision group supervision, and he'd agreed to coach someone in a charity when he first started as a coach. So it started off as a bit of practice coaching, pro bono practice. And he just carried on. And they hadn't contracted to carry on. He just carried on. So carried on coaching this guy for free for a couple of years.
Wow.
Now, it would have made sense. And it did make sense. He did eventually end the relationship, or suggested that the guy would have to start paying. And I don't think he did start paying. So that was for the coach's convenience that relationship came to an end, because the contract didn't suit, or the way he was working didn't suit him anymore. So there are going to be times when it is for your convenience as a coach, and that's fine. You're in business.
Yeah. I think conversely, it's important to recognise that you can't keep coaching someone just because they're paying you, and that comes into the ethical consideration. You don't want to extend the coaching relationship because you need the client, because perhaps you're wanting the income.
I think that's really hardcore for someone in business, isn't it? To go, wow. Yeah.
But we've both had those conversations with our clients.
Yeah.
We've both, I know, said to clients, if this is no longer serving you, if you want to end the coaching relationship, because you've got to a good point now, you know, I'm not going to be offended by that. You can tell me. And I think that's a really important ethical place to come from.
Yeah, I always had someone that I was coaching him around his assertiveness, and he was really struggling to be assertive in the workplace. And the work wasn't done. He was still struggling to be assertive in the workplace. But he was very assertive in the way he said, I don't want any more coaching. And I was going, well, you know, we're not really that. And he's, just to be clear, I don't want any more coaching. I thought, I've done really well. He's learned a lot.
Oh, dear.
And I think it's also important to remember that most people will contract that either party has the right to withdraw at any time. So if there's a genuine reason why the coach wishes to end the relationship, and it could be about values, couldn't it? It could be that someone holds offensive views that you don't agree with. You might want to withdraw. So we have to be able to do that in a respectful and considered way. And I think there's also instances where ethical concerns might arise. So there might be a conflict of interest when a coachee starts to feel dependent on the coach in a way that's not healthy. So again, in those cases, I think it's appropriate to refer the coachee to another coach. I mean, you could be just passing the problem on to someone else. They might become dependent on them, or suggest they seek support elsewhere. So that, you know, someone is becoming attached and dependent on you as a coach, then, you know, they might need some therapy to sort out why that's happening, because it's probably happening in other areas of their life as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really important point. And I think we need to be really attuned to those signs of codependency.
Yeah.
Or other issues that might require intervention beyond the coaching relationship. And ethically, we should never push a coachee to continue when it's not in their best interest.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think another thing to consider is ensuring that you have clear boundaries around the end of the coaching. So any sort of final paperwork that you need to get sorted out, confidentiality stuff, you know, just reassuring them that the coaching remains confidential beyond the contract, that you're not going to be reporting back to their boss or anything like that. Making sure you're getting paid. And quite often that might not be, it might be a finance department, but your coachee might be the one that needs to push to get you paid, you know, just to confirm that the coaching has ended and that sort of thing. So being clear about those aspects, I think, helps protect the coach and just ensure that smooth conclusion.
And any future contact, maybe.
Yeah, and I think that's something we've not really talked about, because the coaching as it is might come to an end, but we might choose to carry on doing some form of coaching beyond that original contract. And I know you have maintenance sessions with some of your coachees, don't you?
Yeah, and I think for me, if someone has been through a program with me and that's 6 or 12 sessions, that's a lot of time we spend together. And quite often they'll do more than that. So they might come to the end of 12 and do another 12 or another 6. And they've been on quite a journey. We've been on a journey together. So I offer people one-off sessions after that. You know, if they need to just do a drop-in coaching session, something's come up, they've got a dilemma, something flares back up, they become overwhelmed again, or anything really. If they want to just do a one-off session, that they can do that. But also, I quite like it. I do let people know that if they have things they want to celebrate as well, they can just drop me a message. And that's my allowance to boundaries, if you like, that they can reach out and share their good news with me, because I like to hear what's going on for them and find out how they're doing. But not everyone's going to want to do that.
No, having talked about saying goodbye, I find that I don't do it that often.
No, I work with clients for ages.
So I have one client, I'm seeing him next week, lovely guy, who I have now been seeing for 11 years.
Wow.
And it started off, he was on a leadership program, so there was a contracted amount. And he said, I quite like this. Should we carry on? And I see him once a quarter. And there's nothing wrong with him, but he really values that space of having an hour and a half where he can just say what's on his mind, deal with an issue that's coming up, and just reflect for an hour and a half without someone going, well, you know what you need to do. So he just loves that space. So who am I to say, no, you don't need it anymore? Because he's not dependent on it. He could easily live without it, but he really values the space. I've got someone else that I've been coaching now for 2 years. So the first bit of coaching was his first 100 days in a big role. So that coming to terms with the first 100 days.
Sounds like a president.
Yeah, no, it's not a president. Definitely not that president. And but he values the space. So I see him maybe 6 weeks, and we have a good session about whatever's going on for him. He is in a big leadership role, so again values that support. Another person that's again 2 years. We've come to the end of our initial run of sessions. And she said, look, I've got another year in this role. Can you stay with me? Well, let's have 4 sessions over the next year just to see the role out, see where I'm going with that. So again, I'm not going to say, well, no, ethically, I can't do that. So, I very much come around to the idea that coaching isn't necessarily about addressing an urgent need and just helping someone for a short period of time. I think it can be a really healthy relationship over time.
Yeah. I mean, I know people who've had therapy and found the space really useful to talk through things. And they said, when I finish therapy, I'm going to find a coach because I love this space to talk through my stuff. Yeah. Okay, so to summarise, when we're ending a coaching relationship, it's vital to consider practical and ethical aspects. Yes. And we also need to ensure that the timing is right, that there's closure, and that we're sensitive to the coachee's needs. And to reflect on our ethical responsibilities, ensure we maintain boundaries, but then offer that continued support if necessary, or if appropriate.
Yeah, absolutely. So ending the coaching relationship well is just as important as how we begin it. And I think if we do it thoughtfully, then it can empower the coachee to continue their journey on their own and feel supported even though we're not there anymore. They will have learned things that will help them on their way.
More resourced.
Yeah, definitely.
Excellent. I think we've covered most things there.
We have, yes. No, I think that's enough of an airing of time to say goodbye.
Yeah. Well, thank you for a very thoughtful discussion.
Thank you.
And next time on the podcast, we will be talking about...
Next time, we will be talking about Oliver Burkeman's book, 4,000 Weeks, and how it relates to coaching.
Oh, good, because I haven't read it and I'd like to know.
I've read it several times now.
I keep meaning
I'm not a great one for reading books more than once, but it's something I keep going back to. So.
Brilliant. Oh, I'm looking forward to that.
Good. We'll see you next time.
Bye for now.
Bye for now.
This has been a Monkey Pants Productions podcast.